7 Pillars of Wisdom, A Triumph by T.E. Lawrence. These synopses are excerpted from the 1926 edition of 7 Pillars of Wisdom, A Triumph by T.E. Lawrence, printed by M. Pike with the assistance of H.J. Hodgson, London. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Introduction. The Foundations of Arab Revolt. Some Englishmen, of whom Kitchener was chief, believed that a rebellion of Arabs against Turks would enable England, while fighting Germany, simultaneously to defeat her ally Turkey. Their knowledge of the nature and power and country of the Arabic-speaking peoples made them think that the issue of such a rebellion would be happy, and indicated its character and method. So they allowed it to begin, having obtained formal assurances of help for it from the British government. Yet nonetheless, the rebellion of the Sharif of Mecca came to most as a surprise and found the Allies unready. It aroused mixed feelings and made strong friends and enemies, amid whose clashing jealousies its affairs began to miscarry. Book 1. My First Visit to Arabia. I had believed these misfortunes of the revolt to be due to faulty leadership, or rather to the lack of leadership, Arab and English. So I went down to Arabia to see and consider its great men. The first, the Sharif of Mecca, we knew to be aged. I found Abdullah too clever, Ali too clean, Zaid too cool. Then I rode up country to Faisal, and found in him the leader with the necessary fire, and yet with reason to give effect to our science. His tribesmen seemed sufficient instrument, and his hills to provide natural advantage. So I returned confidently to Egypt and told my chiefs how Mecca was defended not by Rabeg, but by Faisal in Jebel Sub. Book 2. Faisal's first extension, northward. My chiefs were astonished at such favorable news, but promised help, and meanwhile sent me back, much against my will, into Arabia. I reached Faisal's camp on the day the Turks carried the defenses of Jebel Sub. By their so doing, the entire basis of my confidence in a tribal war was destroyed. We hovered for a while by Yembo, hoping to retrieve the position. But the tribesmen proved to be useless for assault, and we saw that if the revolt was to endure, we must invent a new plan of campaign at once. This was hazardous, as the promised British military experts had not yet arrived. However, we decided that to regain the initiative, we must ignore the main body of the enemy and concentrate far off on his railway flank. The first step toward this was to move our base to Wej, which we proceeded to do in the grand manner. Book 3. Concentrating against the Medina Railway. Our taking Wej had the wished effect upon the Turks, who abandoned their advance toward Mecca for a passive defense of Medina and its railway. Our experts made plans for attacking them. The Germans saw the danger of envelopment and persuaded Enver to order the instant evacuation of Medina. Sir Archibald Murray begged us to put in such a sustained attack as should destroy the retreating enemy. Faisal was soon ready in his part, and I went off to Abdullah to get his cooperation. On the way I fell sick, and while lying alone with empty hands was driven to think about the campaign. Thinking convinced me that recent practice had been better than our theory. So on recovery, I did little to the railway, but went back to Wej with novel ideas. I tried to make the others admit them and adopt deployment as our ruling principle, and to put preaching even before fighting. They preferred the limited and direct military objective of Medina. So I decided to slip off to Aqaba by myself on test of my own theory. Book 4. The Expedition Against Aqaba. Sharif Nasir, Auda and I set off together for Aqaba. Hitherto, Faisal had been the public leader, but his remaining in Wej threw the ungrateful load of this northern expedition upon myself. I accepted it and its dishonest implication as our only means of victory. We tricked the Turks and entered Aqaba with good fortune. Book 5. Exploiting the New Base. Our capture of Aqaba closed the Hejaz War and gave us the task of helping the British invade Syria. The Arabs working from Aqaba became virtual right wing of Allenby's army in Sinai. To mark the changed relation, Faisal was transferred, with his army, to Allenby's command. Allenby now became responsible for his operations and equipment. Meanwhile, we organized the Aqaba area as an unassailable base from which to hinder the Hejaz Railway. Book 6. The Failure of the Bridges. By November 1917, Allenby was ready to open a general attack against the Turks along his whole front. The Arabs should have done the same in their sector, but I was afraid to put everything on a throw, and designed instead the specious operation of cutting the Yarmouk Valley Railway to throw into disorder the expected Turkish retreat. This half-measure met with its due failure. Book 7. A Winter Campaign. After the capture of Jerusalem, Allenby, to relieve his right, assigned us a limited objective. We began well, but when we reached the Dead Sea, bad weather, bad temper, and division of purpose blunted our offensive spirit and broke up our force. I had a misunderstanding with Zaid, threw in my hand, and returned to Palestine reporting that we had failed, and asking the favor of other employment. Allenby was in the hopeful midst of a great scheme for the spring. He sent me back at once to Faisal with new powers. Book 8. Orthodoxy Arrives. In conjunction with Allenby, we laid a triple plan to join hands across Jordan, to capture Man, and to cut off Medina in one operation. This was too proud, and neither of us fulfilled his part. So the Arabs exchanged the care of the placid Medina Railway for the greater burden of investing in Man, a Turk force as big as their available regular army. To help in this duty, Allenby increased our transport, that we might have longer range and more mobility. Man was impregnable for us, so we concentrated on cutting its northern railway and diverting the Turkish effort to relieve its garrison from the Amman side. Clearly, no decision lay in such tactics. But the German advance in Flanders at this moment took from Allenby his British units and consequently his advantage over the Turks. He notified us that he was unable to attack. A stalemate, as we were, throughout 1918 was an intolerable prospect. We schemed to strengthen the Arab army for autumn operations near Daraa and in the Beni Sakhar country. If this drew off one division from the enemy in Palestine, it would make possible a British ancillary attack, one of whose ends would be our junction in the lower Jordan Valley, by Jericho. After a month's preparation, this plan was dropped, because of its risk and because a better offered. Book 9. Maneuvering for a Final Stroke. Allenby, in rapid embodiment of reliefs from Mesopotamia and India, so surpassed hope that he was able to plan an autumn offensive. The near balance of the forces on each side meant that victory would depend on his subtly deceiving the Turks that their entire danger yet lay beyond the Jordan. We might help by lying quiet for 6 weeks, feigning a feebleness which should tempt the Turks to attack. The Arabs were then to lead off at the critical moment by cutting the railway communications of Palestine. Such bluff within bluff called for most accurate timing, since the balance would have been wrecked either by a premature Turkish retreat in Palestine or by their premature attack against the Arabs beyond Jordan. We borrowed from Allenby some Imperial Camel Corps to lend extra color to our supposed critical situation. Their success glorified them and covered us, while preparations for Daraa went on with no more check than an untimely show of pique from King Hussein. Book 10. The Liberation of Damascus. Our mobile column of airplanes, armored cars, Arab regulars, and Bedouin collected at Azraq to cut the 3 railways out of Daraa. The southern line we cut near Mafraq, the northern at Arar, the western by Mezarib. We circumnavigated Daraa and rallied despite air raids in the desert. Next day, Allenby attacked and in a few hours had scattered the Turkish armies beyond recovery. I flew to Palestine for airplane help and got orders for a second phase of the thrust northward. We moved behind Daraa to hasten its abandonment. General Barrow joined us. In his company we advanced to Kiswi and there met the Australian Mounted Corps. The united forces entered Damascus unopposed. Some confusion manifested itself in the city. We strove to allay it. Allenby arrived and smoothed out all difficulties. Afterwards, he let me go. Epilogue. Damascus had not seemed a sheath for my sword when I landed in Arabia, but its capture disclosed the exhaustion of my mainsprings of action. The strongest motive throughout had been a personal one, not mentioned here, but present to me, I think, every hour of these 2 years. Active pains and joys might fling up like towers among my days, but refluent as air, this hidden urge reformed to be the persisting element of life till near the end. It was dead before we reached Damascus. Next in force had been a pugnacious wish to win the war, yoked to the conviction that without Arab help, England could not pay the price of winning its Turkish sector. When Damascus fell, the Eastern War, probably the whole war, drew to an end. Then I was moved by curiosity. Superflumina Babylonis, read as a boy, had left me longing to feel myself the node of a national movement. We took Damascus, and I feared. More than 3 arbitrary days would have quickened in me a root of authority. There remained historical ambition, insubstantial as a motive by itself. I had dreamed at the city school in Oxford of hustling into form while I lived the new Asia which time was inexorably bringing upon us. Mecca was to lead to Damascus, Damascus to Anatolia, and afterwards to Baghdad. And then there was Yemen. Fantasies these will seem, to such as are able to call my beginning an ordinary effort. End of 7 Pillars of Wisdom, A Triumph by T.E. Lawrence. Read by Atul Sharma, Winnipeg, Canada. Excerpted from the 1926 edition of 7 Pillars of Wisdom, A Triumph by T.E. Lawrence. Printed by M. Pike with the assistance of H.J. Hodgson, London,